Hello, my name is Shundra Jones. This is my graduate research project for Dr. Sanchez's Fall 2020 semester of compensation and benefits. For this project, I will introduce the hypothesis statement. Education is known as a mandatory requirement and standard for members of society. Critics suggest that this fact alone is enough cause for higher educator pay. The education business is facing a real and troubling teacher shortage. I will discuss the dynamics of the total compensation packages of the failing school system and how it affects employee retention. I will discuss the difference between public and private schools and give context to the struggle of education as a business. I will review the case used in the study and offer testimonials from current educators. I will discuss the limitations of this study, give suggestions based on a literature review, and discuss other methodology, as well as give a conclusion with the implications to the 21st century workforce based on the study, and end with a review of the references. The hypothesis statement for this project and the question that I will try to answer pertains to the fact that schools are known for their place in society. I will have studied the dynamics of the total compensation packages of the struggling school system and how it affects employee retention in the education profession. To test my hypothesis, I used a case study, pertinent data, a survey, and educator testimonials. I conducted a literature review of the articles that referred to strategies used to persuade candidates for employment and create a competitive market. The literature review will also establish the differences in the workplace environment and the climate. The interviews conducted with educators along with the survey will gauge motivation for choosing to maintain employment through the struggles that the education business are undergoing. What is public school? The vast majority of American children receive education in public schools. The fact that they are funded with revenue from federal, state, and local government characterizes them as public schools. Public schools must accept all students that reside within the school district, although enrollment numbers, test scores, and student special needs, if any, may influence which school a student attends. State and local law dictate class size, testing standards, and curriculum. What is private school? Private schools, as the name implies, are funded with not funded with public tax dollars. Instead, they are funded primarily through tuition, as well as private donors and grant money. Only about 10% of the nation's students are enrolled in private schools. The vast majority of private schools in the U.S. have affiliations with religious organizations, with the Catholic Church operating more than 40% of such institutions. Schools not involving a specific religion account for about 20% of all private schools, while other religious denominations operate the remainder. Unlike public schools, private schools are not required to admit all applicants, nor are they required to observe some federal requirements such as Americans with Disabilities Act. Private schools may require compulsory religious education, unlike public schools. There will always be a need for great teachers, regardless of the temporary economic conditions, hiring practices, budget cuts, or any other factors that influence the education system. The need for teachers is timeless and universal. Society will always need educators, and in that respect, teaching is one career in which you can be confident you will always have purpose. A teacher shortage occurs when there are not enough teachers in key subject areas, which has been partly caused by years of teacher layoffs, a growing student population, and fewer people entering teacher preparation programs, according to the National Education Agency. The NEA, as it's referred to, talks about the need for teachers is quite real. According to NEA Occupational Outlook Handbook, employment of teachers must grow. There are about 3.5 million kindergarten, elementary, middle, and high school teachers in this country, but we need another 500,000 to be hired in order to accommodate the immediate and future needs of students. NEA found that the national average teacher's salary is $63,645. However, Teachers' economic position has worsened over time. Inflation has eroded most of teachers' salary increases. Over the past decade, the average classroom teacher's salary has increased by 14.1%, but after adjusting for inflation, their actual average salary has decreased by $1,122. The study also notes that comparable professions with similar education earn higher salaries. Nationally, teachers earn 19% less than other skilled and educated professions. This teaching penalty has increased significantly over the last 20 years. According to the labor statistics, the mean salary of a kindergarten through 12th grade teacher in May 2017 was $58,780, with the top 10% earning an average of $91,590. There are many factors that go into how much you will make as a teacher. In order to attract teachers, schools need to pay a salary that will compare with the cost of living. One of the most distinctive factors in determining your teacher's salary is your level of education. A bachelor's degree with a licensure in your state is enough to be a teacher, but it is also the most basic qualification and will earn you the most basic salary. Teachers looking to increase their salary may benefit from a master's degree, such as a Master's of Science in Teaching. Teachers with master's degrees are eligible for more promotions, and many schools offer compensation for advanced degrees. Pay may also vary depending upon the grade level you teach. It is no longer enough to have years of teaching experience. After the No Child Left Behind Act, the Every Student Succeeds Act, and other academic quantification measures, teachers' careers are increasingly dependent on the results they achieve in their classroom. A master's in teaching can give you more educational theory and classroom skills, as well as more hands-on student teaching experience with a mentor. After completing a master's program, you may be able to achieve better classroom results and will thereby have more job security as well as higher compensation. Teachers in Dallas, for example, earn at least $1,000 more annually just for holding a master's rather than a bachelor's degree. High school teachers teach more complex subjects and are generally required to have majored or be certified in a subject that they teach, as usually paid more than elementary school teachers. They are not required to have specific certifications to be an elementary teacher. It's important to note that the salaries for public school teachers are set by that school district through a salary guide for that specific district. Private schools, on the other hand, are completely autonomous. They are able to set their own standards and requirements for teacher pay. Therefore, they also set the salaries for their teachers. So, a candidate before applying to work at a private school should check the institution's policies. Teaching comes with many of the individual benefits of most careers. Again, this can vary widely depending upon where you work, but generally speaking, teachers are entitled to insurance for themselves and their families, including medical, dental, and vision coverage. They are also entitled to sick days and paid leave. Teachers are also eligible for a wide variety of teaching grants. And of course, there's the summer vacation. There are many ways that teachers make their time off spent productively, including continuing education, teaching summer school, volunteer work, and much more. Professional development is essential to teachers as the state education agency requires a minimum number of continuing professional education hours for certification renewal. Although professional development is not required for certification in private schools, the board of that school may require it as a best practice for their educators. The Texas Education Agency hosts a list of approved professional development providers on the Texas Education Agency website. This is a statewide professional development site that lists courses that can be taken online through resources organized by primary subject, grade range, and content type. It even includes self-directed professional development training courses that can be completed to earn career advancement development credits. Teacher pay has been in the headlines across the country recently. In 2018, there were half dozen statewide protests over educators' salaries and pensions. Some of the momentum has continued into 2020. Teaching has long been viewed as a low-paid job, but much more goes into teachers' compensation than just take-home paychecks. Although teaching is a profession, the way that teachers are paid looks a lot more like the way we pay blue-collar workers in the United States, said Mrs. Karen Isbell, a veteran high school English teacher whom I had the pleasure of interviewing. What exactly does that look like, I asked. Ms. Isbell is an expert in her field to break down how teachers are paid. She said that the average base salary for teachers is $55,000, and that although teachers work 10 months and do not work during the summer, their annual salary is actually spread over a full year. Teachers are paid less than comparable workers with similar education levels. Non-wage benefits as a share of total compensation is very important to teachers, possibly more important to teachers than other professionals, Mrs. Isbell says. Non-wage benefits include prepaid premiums and pensions. She added that teachers earn a step increase for each additional year of experience, with many teachers peaking at their highest step by age 55. Teachers can also earn more by having more education, such as a master's or doctoral degree, or by earning a certain number of credit hours for professional development. She says that since teacher salary is locally determined, affluent districts and private schools often get paid more than the poorer districts. Teachers cannot negotiate a raise outside of the district salary, and some districts give teachers extra pay when their students do well academically, depending upon that district. Teachers who take on extra responsibilities such as team leader, academic coach, they can also receive other stipends. Next, I interviewed Mrs. Handy, also a veteran teacher, regarding teacher pension plans and retirement. Mrs. Handy says that teacher pension plans require teachers to teach at least 5 years in order to qualify for the benefits. Leaving before this minimum time means that they forfeit those benefits. It is required for teachers to pay a portion of their salary into the pension system. Retirement points are determined by a combination of your age and years of service. So she says what a teacher actually collects depends on when the teacher leaves for any reason, including retirement. Typically, pensions become more generous as teachers near their retirement, since they have so many years of experience. Teachers who move to another state or leave the profession before reaching retirement age can sacrifice significantly. She says, I not only moved from another state when I left Louisiana, but I changed careers for 2 years, basically hitting reset on my career and education both times. School teachers are not covered under Social Security, so many advocates fear that not having Social Security as a support leaves teachers vulnerable in retirement. I spoke with a private school teacher named Mr. Bart Davis about the role insurance premium plays in the total compensation benefits package and its importance in choosing to be a part of a struggling profession. Mr. Davis says that most teachers participate in a health insurance plan offered by their districts, but in a private school sector, it is usually not a part of the compensation package. He says that insurance costs are higher for private school sector employees. And across the nation, private school teachers pay about 20% more for their individual coverage. That is higher than workers in other public industries. With rising healthcare costs, private school teachers have been expected to foot more of the bill for their own healthcare coverage. Compared to a decade ago, when he first started, teachers are contributing nearly $1,500 more per year toward premiums adjusted for inflation. That's higher than other state employees have to pay. And Mr. Bart Davis says, I honestly don't know how much longer I can do it. The specific need of schools vary from district to district. The label department allows states to identify their own teacher shortage areas, but encourages them to follow a prescribed methodology based on unfilled teacher positions, teaching positions filled by instructors with irregular certifications, and positions filled by teachers certified in other subject areas. Some areas, particularly in high need schools in the South and West, have higher needs for teachers. There is also a demand for subjects with certain academic areas such as science, technology, engineering, and math education with it is a great example of an area where there's a high demand for great teachers. Teacher compensation is more than salary. It is a valuable total package that includes salary, extra pay, benefits, and pension. Combined, they are the single largest expenditure in any school organization. The present structure of the teacher compensation packages is backloaded to reward career service. This practice comes at the expense of entry level salary in order to afford the total compensation package of the senior teachers. Every decision around compensation in the education business should focus on improving teacher recruitment, motivation, and retention. States and districts should re examine the total compensation structures to better support and drive effective teaching. To create sustainable solutions that will have a long term impact, the structure of the salary system must change. Compensation is understandably an important aspect of the teaching profession to consider and employee retention in this struggling business. In rethinking the total compensation package, health care and pensions should not be forgotten. These are powerful incentives that should be used to reward and motivate the most effective teachers in a manner that promotes a lasting career. In order to create an effective compensation package, the education business must structure strategic plans of compensation, generating an expansion in policies that tie education compensation with performance that produces stipends to individuals as well as campuses. The limitations that I encountered with this study were that measuring teacher performance will require technology. The technology will be used to gather, analyze, and keep data, which will include lesson plans and student records. Another limitation involved private schools. Private schools are free to choose their own form of assessments and tests, and they're not required to publish this information, bringing about a limitation on gathering, analyzing, and keeping and collecting data. Public schools must administer standardized tests that are chosen by the state, and they are required to publish this, but it also has limitations based on the technology that's sent to those campuses. Schools are facing a real and troubling teacher shortage. Part of the problem resides within the current compensation models. Models should develop new compensation strategies and philosophies in order to compete for and keep talented teachers. To advance the discussion, schools should be thinking strategically about compensation, the kind of compensation that will attract and retain quality teachers in order to move the institution of education forward. The methodology that I used for this was a case study by the National Center for Analysis on Longitudinal Data in Education Research. It showed that ultimately one must evaluate the use of value added measures in a teacher compensation system relative to other feasible alternatives. Despite their shortcomings, at least partial reliance on value added measures when determining teacher compensation may prove to yield better student outcomes than the traditional compensation system, which is based on teacher experience and educational attainment. Ongoing research on extant performance pay systems for teachers should yield more definitive answers on the overall efficacy of using student performance as a component of teacher compensation and contribute to employee retention. In conclusion, with implications for the 21st century workforce, I found that historically in America, teacher salaries have been low in comparison to salaries for other fields with comparable skill sets and entry requirements for education and degrees. Pay disparity must improve due to the dramatic change in the face of the crisis of teachers recruitment for both public and private schools. This study proposes that there is a need for additional compensation to accommodate for added instructional strategies and appropriate guidance of student engagement and learning during the process of immersive virtual learning. Recruitment, retention, and motivation of employees is increasingly recognized as a critical variable to the success of schools. An integrated and coherent compensation model is the central core of an efficient education policy. In private and many public schools, the compensation package is considered a strategic whole and carefully designed to get the most return per dollar of compensation. By contrast, the compensation system in public schools is much more fragmented and uncoordinated, with each piece perhaps responding to pressures from a particular constituency or inherited from an earlier collective bargaining agreement, but without systematic consideration of the logic or incentive effects of the whole. Accountability pressures are forcing private schools to address the inefficiencies in this compensation system and to rethink how they are spending for compensation of their instructional personnel. My examination of public and private schools suggests that large unfunded liabilities for pensions and retirement benefits are likely to force reform in this area. Experience from the private sector and other government employment suggests that much trial and error, hopefully combined with evaluation, will be necessary to arrive at an effective and workable system. However, it is important for education authorities to create a regulatory space within which these compensation reform and experiments can be carried out and studied. My recommendations, based on research, I would recommend that all teachers be offered competitive salaries when compared to other professions. I recommend that teacher pay be based on expertise and increased pay for teachers in understaffed areas such as math, science, and special ed. I also recommend bonuses based on student achievement. Additionally, teachers working in troubled schools should work for higher salaries. Most importantly, I recommend that teachers be paid on performance. Rewarding success and holding failures accountable is effective motivation. These recommendations are essential to retaining best teachers. The following are a list of my references. I would like to thank you all for your attention, and I appreciate the opportunity that I had with this study.